Hello and welcome to the CyberScotland podcast. My name is Kirstie Steele. I'm the Community Lead for CyberScotland. In this session, we'll be hearing about the CyberScotland Partnership. The CyberScotland Partnership is a collaboration of key organisations working together to improve cyber resilience across Scotland. The partnership aims to improve communications, skills, and share knowledge that will help organisations and people recognise cyber risks and help them to stay secure online. By working collaboratively, they can share information and support communities in Scotland to thrive by being more digitally secure and resilient. And my guest on the podcast today is Keith McDevitt, and he's the Cyber Integrator at the Scottish Government's Cyber Resilience Unit. So hi Keith, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Hi, you're most welcome.
So I'm just going to jump right in. You were involved at the very beginning of the CyberScotland Partnership, and we've just heard a little bit there in the introduction about what that is, but what led to that idea?
So we need to go back to 2015 when we at government published Safe, Secure and Prosperous, the cyber resilience strategy for Scotland, so a 5-year strategy. And behind that were 5 action plans spread across kind of public, private and third sector with the skills agenda also attached to that. And we were working as a small team in government with a number of key strategic partners. In fact, I think there was about 10, might ultimately have been about 11 strategic partners who we worked with to help deliver the actions that met the strategy's aims. And it was quite informal, I guess, because everybody comes from slightly different backgrounds, doing different things within the community, and obviously community reach right across Scotland PLC was the aim. So it was natural that we collaborated with a whole bunch of organisations who had that reach. But one of the things that we concluded at the end of it, and it was very successful, as you know, because you were part of it, was that with so much going on, it was really quite difficult to get a handle on the extent of the activities that were being undertaken across the board. And we concluded that really additional value could come from actually bringing the group, the strategic partners together in a much more formal setting, and that's the idea of this partnership. So bring them together as a formal partnership, and this would allow us to sort of demonstrate that strong leadership that we speak about and bring a real focus on the efforts of improving cyber resilience right across Scotland. And you've outlined exactly what it says in the tin for the partnership. So that was what was behind it. It helped us really focus on sharing the knowledge level across the board so we could identify opportunities where we could collaborate better. Because it's not uncommon for organisations to have a fairly siloed approach to what they do, because we all operate in slightly different ways and have different reach. But it was that ability for one organisation to see the opportunity to also contribute into a wider piece of work. And that's exactly what we did. Attached to that, there was opportunity also of really taking that collaboration piece and addressing another issue that's been a constant, and that is the communications piece. So this is strongly about communicating messages throughout Scotland, throughout our communities, which are quite diverse, and really having a common approach to doing that. And indeed, the CyberScotland Partnership portal and the brand that we're going to grow was a very important part of that, because there are plenty of well-intended organisations out there trying to do stuff in this space. And it was quite a challenge for people to understand where they could go to get definitive guidance. So it was kind of rolling these two things together. One is formalising a partnership that was already successful, but building a brand, building a capability, and actually taking it to the next level and improving that collaboration and focusing on the messaging in the right way to the right audiences. And that's how it came about. And it was a fairly simplistic idea, quite frankly, and amazingly quick to come together.
That sounds great. And you've mentioned some of the partners there that, they've all got kind of different audiences. So maybe you could tell us, who are some of those partners that are behind it, and, why were those the right sort of combination of people?
Yeah, well, so primarily it's about the reach, as you'll see. So, for example, in the early days, where the Scottish Business Resilience Centre is one of the partners whose reach obviously is into small businesses, and indeed across the charity sector where there's small businesses also. Police Scotland, universally obviously there to provide advice and guidance and respond to incidents. We had, importantly, the National Cybersecurity Centre, the UK Technical Authority as a technical partner. That was also important. Obviously, government itself. Scotland is a membership organisation that looks after the tech industry to give us reach into that industry. And with our enterprise agencies as well, Highlands and Islands and Scottish Enterprise, because they were supporting quite a lot of the development of both small and large organisations across Scotland. On the skills side, we had Education Scotland, we had Skills Development Scotland, and YouthLink, Young Scot, and SCVO for the third sector and charity sector. So you can see we had a kind of pretty broad reach. And you can probably understand from what I've been saying that they all really are doing different pieces of work, but they have reach into the community in different ways. And that's the kind of reach that we really wanted to exploit. What we did want to do is bring that sort of common themes, common messaging, to allow us to exploit that reach.
Yeah, because cyber is a universal thing, isn't it?
Of course it is. Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to impact everybody. So those are kind of like your dedicated people that those audience would go to for those sort of types of support.
And that was the intent, to try and understand that there was no easy way to kind of get that reach out there, and you had to make the best of what you had. And we've since expanded that. These initial organisations in the last year or so since we formally launched the partnership at Cyber Scotland Week, we've now developed that capability. We come together, we talk as a network, both at a steering group, strategic level, and much more importantly, at a network level, kind of coordinators come together from all these organisations where we just share what's going on and bounce off each other. And we've added some very important ones of late. And particularly IASME, who provide cyber essentials, which is a very important tenet of what we're trying to do to get the basics right in the fight against cyber attacks. So let's get the basics right. We've supported that from day one. And the most recent one that we've added on was the UK Cybersecurity Council, who are there to pioneer and take charge of the skills agenda across the UK. So these are important kind of UK links into the partnership, and we're really pleased to have them on board because we are the sum of all the parts. They really do improve our ability to reach and communicate effectively.
And you mentioned that the partnership has been going now for, just over the year. So, and all these different partners, they bring different elements to it. So what was it that's been maybe your highlight, or the highlight of the partnership of these groups working together that way? Have you got any good examples of, how they've worked together well? Yeah,
I think it's still early days. Let's be clear about that. So, we were in that position where we had fairly siloed thinking for obviously, the reasons are very understandable. They were operating in their area and they were adding the cyber piece to it. But the collaboration piece really came where you got the multiple organisations working on the same piece of work, because they're providing added value and a different perspective also, which is really, really quite importantly. So this doing things slightly differently was quite important. I guess in year one, it's just really that being able to successfully create the community that is Cyber Scotland Partnership and create in year one the brand. I didn't really think we'd go at this pace, but it was important that we established the portal, the web presence where the partnership would exist, and indeed the content. So for me, year one is really about having really accelerated and got our presence felt and working on doing that. Yeah, a particular favourite piece of mine personally probably should be incident response piece, because that's what I do day and daily. But I'm going to surprise you and say, actually, it's not. I do like that stuff. It is very important. It's the thing I'm going to take to the Scottish Cyber Coordination Centre, is that incident response lead, and let's get everybody prepared. That's fine. But actually, the thing that makes me smile the most is Digi Ken.
What's the Digi Ken initiative?
Well, Digi Ken initiative is aimed at people like me because it fits my demographic. For the slightly older, more mature audience that we have out there, who have the same lessons to learn. One of the big issues, let's be very clear, is over the last 7 to 10 years, it's really been challenging for everybody involved in this business to engage an audience with important messages. Generic messages don't really reach. It doesn't hit home. It doesn't land. And importantly, people who listen to them just tend not to take them on board. So what we learned very early on is actually you need to kind of tailor messages to suit audiences and deliver it in a way that they probably would expect to see it. So the Digi Ken programme of work initiative was really about trying to reach slightly older audiences, more mature, let me correct myself, more mature audiences, through a medium that they understood and using humour, which really appealed to me. So getting very simple messages in the form of a traditional 1970s TV game, and having a comedian front that. It got people laughing, but behind the laughter were very simple and serious messages. And it kind of demonstrates how we were able to be quite flexible and take what were standard messages that were lost to these kind of audiences and put them in front of them. And the thing that mostly made me smile about that with Digi Ken is the fact that in my UK-wide meetings, I had to translate what Digi Ken actually meant, which always got a laugh. So it was great. And the final piece on all that is, of course, the absolute favourite of mine is it comes with Digi Ken socks, which are the most perfect Christmas gift or birthday gift or anniversary gift for anybody.
Yeah, I think I've seen you rocking those socks, certainly, Keith, at a few events.
Indeed I do, yeah.
Definitely helping spread the cyber message through that way.
There's different ways to do it. That's what I've always been saying. And when they're lying in the washing basket, quite frankly, they're going to draw some attention.
It's a talking point.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, there's that sort of hard-hitting message behind it, with the 3 sort of simple steps, which is really kind of the aim of what it was. And for people that are listening that haven't seen the videos, you can certainly watch them on the CyberScotland website if you search for Digi Ken. They're well worth a watch and test your skills in the quiz to see if you can find out what the answer is.
Absolutely.
So we mentioned there, some of the basics, getting them across. So let's have a look at the bigger picture now. What is the biggest cyber challenge basically facing Scotland, and what can the partnership do to kind of help tackle that challenge?
So there's kind of 2 things here. So there's risk. The changing nature of risk, cyber risk, and I'll deal with that first because the 2 most significant changes that have happened and endorsed by the National Cybersecurity Centre is the evolution of cybercrime, particularly ransomware, or as we like to call it, extortion. Let's call it by the name it truly is. So it's online extortion, often using encryption, but not solely doing that now. It's evolved from being a fairly annoying attack to being, quite frankly, a disaster attack on many businesses, with businesses really being taken down. And it's evolved over a very short period of time to become quite sophisticated and very challenging to deal with. And the impact for businesses can be really, really significant. So that's a growing problem. Coupled with the other one is the supply chain threat. So criminals are often seeking ways to improve their return on investment because it's a business for them. And we all rely on supply chains one way or another. And often SMEs, small businesses, are actually part of that supply chain and have less money to spend on security. Therefore, they're a reasonably weak link through which criminal organisations can exploit. Indeed, even some complex organisations who have massive reach, such as managed service providers, are actually being targeted because we trust them in our networks because they're providing services that we rely on, and therefore they represent a risk to us. So the whole evolution of ransomware currently is one of the big issues, and the supply chain attacks are the big threats. Now, that's the threats, but we're talking about challenges. The real challenges are organisations' ability, and indeed individuals' ability, to take proportionate response to that, because the threats I've spoken about are, only two of the higher end threats. There are a multitude of different cyber risks that individuals and organizations have to deal with. But these are the biggies. These are the ones that are causing the most difficulty. So the real challenge is how we engage organizations and individuals right across the board and improve their understanding of the threat and their exposure to that threat, and then empower them to do something about it. And that's often, for me, the problem. Messages land, but don't change people's habits. And unless we change habits of individuals and organizations, because they're made up of individuals, then we're in a really, really difficult place. And it's almost sad, but natural, that the time that people really learn about cyber is when they've been a victim of cyber, essentially when it's just a bit too late. And then they wish that they'd listened to the messages that they've sort of heard but did nothing really about, because we are all really busy people with lots going on. And funnily enough, life is bigger than cyber for the vast majority of people. So it's really about that, understanding a changing nature of risk and allowing people to know where they can go and get good, sound, practical advice in a way that they can both consume it and make sense of it. And there is no easy answer to that. There's no single message. There is no single source of truth in this. And the partnership seeks to find a way of making that accessible and working with partners and organizations to address some of these needs. And again, Digi Ken project was one such example of actually trying to reach out to a particular demographic to land that message and sort of change behaviours. So the challenge is, as we continue to move on, not the cyber threat because it's evolving, the challenge really is getting people and businesses to recognise that threat relevant to them and take action.
Yeah, and I think there's always been a sort of stage where people think that it's quite complicated or quite costly maybe to do some of these things, and obviously maybe that does have an element to play in the way that people actions are, if they actually take it on board.
I think you're absolutely right, and language has got an awful lot to do with this. So we information security, where this is all born from, is the realm of the techies who have their own language. The language that we need to translate that into the language of business for business, and we need to translate that into the language of citizens for citizens. It has to be tailored in a way that people understand it, that it's relevant to them, and that's actually quite a challenge. But the diversity in the organisations that we have in the partnership bring these challenges to us, and Lead Scotland would be a good example as a partner that we're working with, who understand that accessibility piece, and they can offer up to the rest of us, the partnership itself, how we may take messages and actually make them available, and so they're accessible in the widest forums, because that's what it's all about. So we need to get the basics right, and getting the basics right is worth spending time on, because some of the real threats that we have are still exploited in the very basics that existed 10 years ago. It's still about poor passwords, that until they disappear, they will haunt us. It's still about phishing, not sophisticated ways of getting into networks, although that's possible, but criminals are lazy. They want the easiest route in. And the easiest route in is by exploiting individuals, exploiting the fact that we, are busy individuals and maybe don't take care and updating our operating systems or configuring networks if it's a business. These are all basic stuff, and they're not necessarily highly technical, but these I don't think we should ever get bored of pushing these messages, because these are the things that will make the most difference to being able to defend ourselves against the vast majority of attacks. And for those that we can't defend against, and it's a lottery out there, folks, just in case you're not sure, an absolute lottery. It's just your bad luck often that you fall for these, and it's no crime that you do, because they're designed to work. You need to have a plan. a response plan that's adequate for your organisation or you as an individual, so you know what you're going to do when it happens, because it's sod's law, it's going to happen, and it's happening all the time. Just currently, for the vast majority, you haven't seen it yet.
It's just that kind of prepare for the worst. Or prepare for the hope that it won't happen.
Well, exactly, absolutely. And be content that in actual fact, if it does, you've done all that you think you could reasonably be expected to do. And I don't think anybody would expect any more of any individual or any business. And that's a fairly pragmatic response, I think.
Yeah. So you've come up with some really good points there as well. So what would be, if you had to sum up anything, would you have like a sort of key message, the one key thing that you want the listeners to take away with them from this podcast?
Well, obviously, I'm going to say, if you're not sure, get yourself along to the CyberScotland Partnership portal, because everything you could ever want is there. But if you want your hands, and this is really important, final message, because this is an important one, and I'm a guy who talks the talk, but you have to be able to walk the walk, and there is no better way to walk the walk if you're wearing a pair of Digi Ken socks. And the only way you're going to get them is if you get yourself along to one of the events that you'll find CyberScotland Partnership at, and you'll need to get in early to get yourself a pair of these snazzy socks, because as we know, socks are cool, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure the listeners will agree. Thanks to Keith for that message. Certainly we will be popping up at the different events throughout the year. So yeah, come by our stand and I'm sure we'll have some there that people can take home, along with good cybersecurity advice, of course. That comes to the end of my podcast, so I just want to say thanks to Keith for joining me on the call, and we hope you've learned a little bit more about the CyberScotland Partnership today. But for the best place to find cyber information and advice across Scotland, visit CyberScotland website, cyberscotland.com.